Welcome back to Series 2 of the Passionate Pioneer podcast with today's guest, Julie.sack. Hi, Julie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Very welcome, very welcome. And obviously, you all know me. I'm Beth. I'm your passionate pioneer. I'm obsessed with empowering women to design a life fueled by passion and purpose. And this podcast is a springboard. Well, we hope it is. It's a springboard to break free from limitations and design the life you deserve. So let me introduce Julie. Julie is a counsellor as well as a career recovery and leadership coach, dedicated to fostering self-confidence, self-awareness, and psychological safety with her clients. She specialises in stress management and workplace issues and believes that well-being is a manifestation of authentic actions and behaviours. Having successfully balanced a thriving career with a large family as a mother, wife, and now grandmother, she understands the importance of well-being and work balance and brings a holistic perspective to her practice with a unique blend of professional expertise and life experience. Well then, that is an interesting life experience. Mother, coach, grandmother now. Gosh, tell us how it all started. How did you tell us about your passions, Julie, and how they started?
It always sounds pretty incredible when somebody else reads out your bio like that. It's like, wow, is that me? But yeah, it has been a long journey with twists and turns, and I guess I could probably spend the whole hour just telling you about my life story, but to sort of get to the point, I dropped out of school when I was 16 and had a child. So I guess that was the big turning point. That's a pretty big change your trajectory action.
Wow, it is, isn't it? Wow, very much so. Gosh.
Yeah, so it wasn't just one child. I had 5, one after the other. So so 23 years old, I had 5 children, and I'd always intended to complete my education, and also had that I really wanted to be a role model for my children. I didn't want us, we weren't living a very wealthy life. My husband and I were living in a small town. There was limited work opportunities. He did have a job, but there were no work opportunities for myself, and no childcare opportunities at that point in time either. So I had to think about what it was that I was going to do to make sure that we had a good and comfortable life, and that I was able to then achieve and strive and be a role model. And I thought that being a teacher would be a really good career choice for me. So I mistakenly thought you got a lot of school holidays, and that would also then solve the problem of having childcare in the school holidays. Teachers don't actually get school holidays. They work the whole time. So I did put myself through uni. I studied and worked really hard to get my degree while the children were small, and then I threw myself into working. Can
I just say that's just how overwhelmed you must have felt at 23 with 5 children, and then trying to put yourself through university as well is definitely trial by fire.
Right? I was too stubborn, young, and naive to really think about it at the time. I just wanted, it's like, nobody's going to tell me I can't do this.
Right. And
I'm just going to do this. So I did.
Fantastic. But, so definitely been a journey of discovery for you then, right?
It certainly has. And I think one of the things that I discovered is that I get very passionate, and I do throw myself 150% into everything I do. And the downside of that is that I burnt myself out. So several years into my teaching career, I didn't recognise it at the time. It was a few years later when I looked back on it, I recognised that's what was happening. So I still absolutely loved the job. I worked in what you call a good school, where I was well supported, and there that many issues. But I just couldn't find that balance between my home life with sort of teenage kids and a husband and trying to be wife, mum, friend, all of those things. I couldn't balance that with being really good at my job. So I decided to walk away. And a lot of people said that was really brave. Maybe it was brave, maybe it was silly with a mortgage and children. But I decided to throw it to the universe and see what happened and take some time away from teaching and just started applying for all sorts of random jobs. I still...
Can we just go back there, because we've skipped. So you pursued a career in teaching, which I know all about, and it's very right. It's very true. People think it's that teachers have a lot of time off, but you know, I've experienced it in private teaching. You know that you it's not just the teaching; it's the work that you have to do when you're home. It's the lesson planning. It's the homework checking, it's the grading, it's the report cards, it's the preparing for the next year in the summer holidays. It's actually some summer school as well, isn't it? So I understand that it's you know, people think that teaching is easy, but you know, and it's time off. Yeah, lots of time off, but it's not. It's not as easy.
Think that it's a family friendly job as well, and in some ways it can be, but I just was never able to figure out how you could be really good at that job and also have a life balance outside of it. It was something that was out of my grasp. So I just had to make the decision for everybody's well-being, my family's and my own, to take that break away from it. And I threw a whole lot of job applications out there and ended up with a job at a university. So it was still education-based. Still got to draw from everything that I had been doing and what I was good at and what I cared about. And so, but I did start to recognise the burnout that I was feeling. I'd been really ill. 7 or 8 times the year, my final year of teaching, I was just really sick. Didn't like taking time off work, but I had to at times just because I became run down and quite sick. But
it's a familiar story, Julie. Would that surprise you? It's a familiar story.
Oh, I absolutely know that. I absolutely and I recognise it because those feelings did creep back in a few years later, but they were a lot easier to spot and do something about.
So when you first started teaching, because you live in Sydney in Australia, yes? Have you always
a few hours away from Sydney?
Okay.
So out in the country, but closest capital city is Sydney.
Okay. And have you always lived in that area close to Sydney or in Sydney?
Yeah, absolutely. We've lived in the same area for my whole life.
Okay. So when you first started teaching then, were you in schools before you moved to the university, or did you?
Yeah, I actually first started teaching in the school that I went to school at. So I went to my childhood school, and that's where I started my teaching career. And then we moved about an hour away to a bit of a bigger place. And yeah, it's still a regional area. It still feels like a big country town, but yeah, it's a really lovely part of the world to live.
So then when you said you moved from so you moved because you realised it was burnout, you did a sidestep and you moved to the universities thinking that was going to be better?
Yes, and it absolutely did what I needed it to do. So I was working a 35-hour week, which only a 35-hour week, it was amazing. And there was no expectation to work beyond your hours.
Nice.
And I had gone in with the attitude that I will not be giving 150% of myself to a job again, that I needed to find that balance. So I didn't feel like I wasn't striving. I was just getting by. I was just doing my job, doing it well, but doing my job and coming home. And a couple of years later, I started to feel that I'd recovered. I saw people that I used to work with and they said I looked 10 years younger. So the stress had diminished. And then I started to get a little bit hungry and ambitious after that. So once I'd had that time to just do something that was, I guess, not so stressful and so taxing, that then I started striving for more success and went into some management roles in the university and absolutely thrived, loved what I was doing, had amazing people to work with, making a real difference. It had a real social impact, the programs that I was working in, giving access to people who hadn't finished high school. So it was also one of those very close to home things. It wasn't just that I cared about it in general. I actually cared about it because it was me. So it was good to be able to be giving back to rural communities and giving opportunities to people who had experienced all sorts of levels of disadvantage. And then, as universities do, they have obsessive compulsive restructure disorder, and they like to shuffle things around. Somebody likes to push all the beans around and count the beans, and they decided that I was bean they didn't need anymore. So, so I was made redundant last year. So it was actually a pretty horrific experience. Because in the several months up to it, leadership above me had obviously been making some decisions they couldn't share down the line, and things just really changed. So I had 6 years that were amazing, and I had about 7 months that were absolutely awful, full of roadblocks. And I understand now what it was, because they were making different decisions. But at the time, it was just incredibly frustrating. It impacted my entire team. It was just devastating. It was a very poorly managed change process.
Right.
And it was, really quite devastating. So, it was at the time that it was unfolding, we lost a really good family friend to suicide. And then a few days later, my daughter gave birth and nearly died. And then a few days after that, I had to then go to my team and tell them that we were being restructured.
So
it was
some major turning points there, yes. It's normally
so there was the end of a life, the start of a life, the threat of losing someone. Well, we lost one person we loved, and we had that fear of another person that we loved hanging on, and she's fine now. My daughter's fine, and the baby's amazing. And so that was really, really tough at the time. And then, of course, they dragged it out for a couple of months of consultation, which just leaves you hanging on the edge with anxiety, pulls all of the good, bad and ugly emotions out of everybody who's impacted. Right. So, so then left that job, but when they do restructure you, they have to pay you a redundancy. So it meant that I had money, which I know is a really big privilege, to have money and space to be able to then sit back and look at what do I want to do with the rest of my life, or the next part of my life, not the rest, because there'll be all sorts of changes in the future, but
for the foreseeable future. And it is, I mean, you are, it is a privilege, as you say, but it's not, again, it's not the first story I've heard of, a restructure of a company, changes in a career that give you, let's look at the silver lining. Yes, it gives you time and space to think about what you want to do and reevaluate your life. So what's important, and what shall I do now? How can I make a bigger impact on the world? Because this was great, but it's come to an end. And where there's endings, there's
absolutely,
right? Which is nice. And you said on reflection, these things happen for a reason, as a wake-up call. I posted something last week on social media about some of my big turning points, and most of them were trauma points. They were loss of family members, and etc. And those things, those types of trauma, give you a wake-up call, and make you sort of stop and reevaluate where you're going, what you've done, primarily where you're going, really. What's the next step, and are you happy where you are and with what you're doing? And I guess another side step into education was not an option, right, Julie?
I felt really burnt.
Right.
I was very angry. I was actually surprised at how hurt I was, because logically you sit and say, it's just a job. But I hadn't let it be just a job. I had given my heart and soul to it. So that, I think, is what hurt. And I kept thinking, there are people very close to us who have lost actual people, and I'm crying about a job. So it was getting through those initial stages of the grief and the anger. And I was thinking about, well, what are my values? What is it that what is at my core being that I want to then align myself with in the future? And having that privilege of, you know what, I don't have to just take a job. Right. I need to, at this point, find the next step that is going to not just fill my pockets, to fill my cup, to fill my soul. And that's what I wanted to look for. And I was angry. And what I wanted to give back to the world was I wanted to fix every shit manager out there. And everybody you speak to knows one, or has had one, or knows someone who's been severely impacted by one. And that was where it started. I decided I'm going to become a leadership coach, and I'm going to work with people at the start, beginning, middle of their leadership journey, and coach them on how to treat people well, how to have thriving workplace cultures. And it was fueled by anger, and over a few months it evolved into, so I was throwing everything out there, doing lots of putting myself out to the world, which was at times a little bit uncomfortable, throwing things out on social media, just trying to get this established. The people I was attracting were not the shit managers. They don't know that they're terrible. They don't want to acknowledge that they're terrible. Their organisations hide and protect them. It's the victims that have been attracted to me. So I guess you put out what your energy, and then you attract back. So obviously the energy I was putting out was attracting the hurt people.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I've just found, during COVID, I decided to study counselling, because I was a teacher. I wasn't a counsellor. So during COVID, I wanted to do something that would help me. At the time, I thought, I'm never going to be a counsellor, but I'm really interested in this. And I wanted to be able to communicate more effectively as a manager. So I studied counselling because I'm a problem solver. I jump in when somebody's telling me what the problem is. I've jumped in and I'm solving it really efficiently. Bang, I'm there working on the answer. And what I really wanted to do was to be able to rein that in a bit, and to be able to listen more effectively and use strategies to empower the other person to solve their own problem.
Right. I was going to say, yes, it's great when you're in a management position, because I was exactly the same problem solver. And it's about reining it in, isn't it? Because I've had to do exactly the same as you, Julie, which is to rein it in so that I can empower you to find your own answers. How do I do that? And it's all mentoring, teaching, coaching, counselling. They very much overlap each other at some point in coaching sessions. Right.
It's incredible how much it started to overlap.
Right.
And a few months in, I started doing some resume work. So people that were obviously people who are hurt are often looking for a new job. And one of the things that I know that I'm quite good at is presenting people in resume form and helping them with job applications and coaching them through how to put their best self forward into words, into that job application. So what I found was that when people were coming to me for that service, they were also then falling apart and needing counselling. because there's a reason you're looking for a new job. Sometimes it's just because you're bored and you're striving, but a lot of the time it's because you're really unhappy in the situation you're in and you've finally decided to take a step and make a change.
Yes.
And often those people they're not at their best. They're not at their peak confidence when they are hurt. So I decided to register my counselling qualification and start to actually use that. So I opened a counselling practice, and I kind of had the two things sitting separately, but they just kept coming closer and closer together. And it really is one thing that I'm doing. I am helping people recover from a setback in their career. Then I got really excited and I wanted to write a book about it. So I've started interviewing women who have had a career setback, all this big range of different women from all over the world who have had a setback. And I'm just finding all those little bits of wisdom, all of the things that happened, how they felt, the resilience that they have, where it came from. And I'm pulling it all together into a book, which then supports what I'm doing with the work that I'm doing as well. So watch this space. That'll be
it's
coming
stories,
at some
isn't
point.
it? And I tell you what, it empowers me. I feel amazing when I hear stories. And and this is series 2, so I had 23 episodes in series 1. And I've just started, and I've got, I think, 23, the same amount. It's strange, right? So it must be a number for me. 23 women signed up for series 2. But it's incredible just how many stories overlap, how many similarities there are. But I just love to, I lean in and I listen. And I always learn something new. And I always resonate with something in a story. Because we're all
such an honour too. I know you understand this because it's what you do. It's such an honour for someone to open up and be raw and vulnerable and trust you with their story.
Yeah, it's incredible.
So it's again, that is one of those things that you're writing a book, unless you're on a contract with a publisher, you're not getting paid. But it's one of those things that doesn't fill my pockets yet. It fills my cup, fills my soul.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And isn't that just amazing that it does that? Yeah, it's not about the money, is it? We hear time and time again, it's about the energy, and it's about the way that you feel about something. And maybe it doesn't give you the finances at the moment, but it gives you the joy and it fills your cup. And that's exactly how I feel about this podcast, Julie. It fills my cup. It brings me so much joy. I am so excited. I'm nervous. I'm excited. In fact, I was devastated because I broke my wrist in January, and I wanted to start this podcast earlier. And then I broke my wrist and I had to postpone everything. And I was like, but so I just had to forget about it and just let go. And then when it was ready, and then I got excited again, because, it's an important part of my journey, is to go on the journey with you. And you'll find that with the book, and I'm sure you have found that with the book and hearing other women's stories, right?
Yeah, it's amazing how all of those little threads, all the things I threw out there, and how they're all really starting to just come together and refine and sending me on this particular path at the moment, which is really satisfying.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And it's also good to be at a point in my life with lots of wisdom, lots of years of experience, and to be able to really appreciate those sort of things in a way that you can't appreciate it when you are up to your eyeballs in children and ambition and youth.
Oh, excuse me, my water is just I've swallowed my water the wrong way, and it so tell me, so on this journey, but when you've from redundancy to the coaching career and writing this book, this journey of discovery, who's helped you on this journey? Have you had any role models or support network, or have you joined any groups? Tell me about the people that have helped you or inspired you.
Yeah, I think so many people. And I think that, again, is something that, being someone who was very young, stubborn and independent, over the years learning to let other people in and help you and guide you and listen, and not be so stuck on trying to prove yourself. So that I've had lots of people that have taught me that it's okay to try and fail, and it's exciting to try and fail. So, yeah, I've had a couple of really good, I've had a leadership mentor that I worked with for a few years. And I think it started off as someone who I'd asked to be a mentor for me in my workplace, someone in a different area, but I would be able to have that objective third-party space, that safe, trust environment to talk through some of my early leadership issues and my management issues. And it turned into more of a peer leadership, because we learned as much from each other as I was learning from her. I've also, like, my husband has been an amazing support. I've not felt any pressure whatsoever to just get out there and get a real job. Like, 100% supported to explore and experiment and just play around with this business that may or may not be profitable anytime in the future, but my gosh, I'm enjoying it.
Right.
So that's been really important. And just meeting there's a lot of women in business. There's local groups that are women in business, and those people are really inspiring. They're people who are at all different points, small business and entrepreneurial journeys, and connecting with those women locally has been really good. And going from a very social workplace to not having a job, it's been a really important way to stay socially connected, to have that outlet, to have people to just speak to. When you're at home working by yourself, it can be a little bit isolating. Yeah. So having people that and people that want to have the same types of conversations as you when you're talking through marketing and marketing strategies and all of those sort of things.
Absolutely.
There's some people that's not relevant to, that are not interested in the conversation. So placing yourself with people who are wanting to have those deep and rich conversations about the things that I care about has been really valuable.
Yeah, I think the deeper, meaningful conversations are really important, aren't they? And to find other people, or the women that are on the same sort of journey and want those kinds of conversations is really important. And then also you find people that can also, help you with advice along the way, right?
You've always got something to learn. Like you were just saying, you learn something in every conversation that you have.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible. So what about so let's talk about the sacrifices that you made, or the significant doubts or fears that you had when you started, because there's certain things that we have to let go of. You've obviously got a lot more responsibility because you've got 5 children, you've got a husband, you're now a grandmother, all of these things. So how did you really, how did you deal with with all of these fears and doubts, and stepping out onto into your own business and exploring what brings you joy? How am I trying to make this question? Have you had any sacrifices or any significant doubts or fears, and how did you overcome them? There you go. How did you overcome?
Yeah, plenty of all of those.
Right.
I think there's something that happens, I think, when you're around 40, and I'm 47 now. Around 40, my amazing sister-in-law and I call it the 40 don't give a beep. It's this attitude that comes over you, and you stop caring as much about what other people think of you, and you start to realise that the other people weren't really thinking about you that much anyway, and if they were, that's their petty life, not yours.
Right.
And so you get this inner confidence that still the doubt creeps in all the time. But if you can grasp onto that sort of that inner voice that's saying, well, why not me? Why the hell not? I'm good at this, I'm good at that. I can own. And also then looking out into the world and going, well, there are people that are not as good at that as I am, not as experienced or skilled, and they're succeeding. So why not me?
Right.
And the reason that they're succeeding is because they have the guts to put themselves out there and just do it.
Right.
So that's, I guess, what I have had to overcome is just to do it. That every action is better than sitting there thinking about it for another few months, because
Right.
if you waited till you're perfect at something, and that's something I've had in over the years, is that perfectionism, wanting to be really like when I've studied, I've wanted to get really good marks, but just do it is probably what I've had to keep and you keep telling yourself, you have that inner dialogue, and your brain listens to what you tell it. If you keep telling yourself you're fat and that dress looks terrible, well, you're never going to wear that dress. But if you put the dress on and you say, I look fabulous, you're going to wear the dress and you're going to rock it, and you're going to look fabulous because you feel it.
Right. Well, if you tell yourself you can, or you tell yourself you can't, you're right.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's
Whatever
telling
you tell
yourself you
your brain.
can, I think is that's how to overcome the doubt. And sacrifice,
Right.
I mean, I've sacrificed from a very young age because I chose to have children.
Right.
And as a mother, you sacrifice so much for your children. And because I had children naively and very young, I sacrificed my entire late teens and the wild 20-something years, sacrificed being able to be selfish, to be self-centered, to do things I wanted in that time. We never had a lot of money, and the kids always came first. So there was sacrifice is something I've done for years, and I feel like finally I don't have to, because they are grown now. I now get to be, I don't feel like I'm sacrificing anything at all. I feel like I get to be really selfish now, and I love it.
That's great. And, you know, at that 47, you know, that's, I started, I left the Caribbean and started my voyage when I was in 2016. And I wrote two books. I wrote a children's book, and I wrote a personal self-help book, 2017 and 2018, and started my journey. So I totally understand, as a Gen Xer, because that's what we are, a Generation X. And you know, and the more women I speak to who are Generation X, the more I feel that we are the generation that bridges the gap. When you help as a career counsellor, and the books and the stories that you're writing, do you find that they are Generation X, or are they millennials? Who are you mostly talking to?
I guess it spans across. I've got people who are really at the start of their career and just facing some obstacles that women shouldn't be facing, some obstacles of inequity in workplaces and some male misogyny, right from now at the start of their career, right through to women who have a wealth of life experience and a dozen stories about where things have taken twists and turns, illness, loss, all sorts of reasons why their career has not stayed on the trajectory they thought that it would. And yeah, it's basically I've got people from early 20s right through to 80-year-old.
Right. Yes, it's amazing.
So it's not just one specific generation, but I guess there are, as I pull all of the stories together, there are some commonalities across the generations. There are some things that are specific, and I guess I relate more closely to those ones from our generation because that's what I've experienced.
Yeah, I do think we are the generation that really bridged the gap and started making a difference. We were the ones that were left on our own. We were the ones that had to be the best. We were the ones that learned, that learned the hard way. We were the generation that had to learn technology in our 30s, that kind of thing, right? So I think we are the biggest gap between generations. There's the baby boomers and then there's the next generation. And I think the Generation X, we were the ones, I think, that made the biggest impact and that are making the biggest impact now. Maybe we didn't. We always towed the line, I think, throughout our life. And then in our 40s, we suddenly said, beep to everybody else. I don't care what everybody else thinks. It's my turn. I've given my life for everybody else. Now it's my turn, and it's my turn to have my time to have a voice.
Yeah, absolutely. You've nailed it.
Yeah, and I think that's the stories that I'm having, and definitely the stories I have with my clients, because that's exactly how they're feeling, that it's their turn, that it's their time, that, we towed the line for so many years. And now we're taking it all back, sister. We're taking it all back. So
I'm wanting to find, and I don't think it's necessarily generational, but I think what the experience of COVID has done to a lot of people is make them crave meaning and balance in their lives. They crave things that fill their soul. They crave those things now, and they're in the aftermath of COVID going, well, what can I do about it?
Right.
What is it that I can do if I'm unfulfilled in my career? I don't have to just suck it up and do it. I can actually take some steps, and it does take some people a lot longer to feel ready.
Yeah. Well, although COVID was a horrible thing to happen, I think it was a necessary evil, because we as a planet, as a human species, we needed to wake up and start realizing that we're worthy of more. We can ask for more. My journey started before COVID. COVID just skyrocketed everything, basically, for me, took it to the next level. But I understand that, if some people didn't have an awakening before, they certainly had an awakening through COVID, right?
Yeah.
So apart from your children, Julie, because I understand that that's a big accomplishment for you and what you did, and being such a young mom and having to balance everything. In your professional journey, in your professional career, what are you most proud of accomplishing on your journey so far?
Yeah, that's really hard, because everyone defines success differently.
Right.
And I did have a bit of a think about this before I came in, and is what do I actually define as success, and the things that I have achieved that I'm really proud of professionally. And I think what I'm most proud of is leaving people in a better state than when I find them.
Nice.
So, and this is feedback that I get from people that I work with, and that's been in all different contexts. And now as their counsellor and their coach, is that when we start working together, that they are impacted by the work that we do, that they are positively impacted. They leave feeling more confident. They leave feeling listened to and supported. And for me, that is a huge achievement. It is that leaving the world better than you found it. And while it might not be the physical environment, it's the people that I feel like I'm leaving better than I find them.
Yeah, I often find that, the one person that you help has a knock-on effect. Right. We don't understand the ripple effect in life, that, even helping a perfect stranger, just by helping them with something, they then help someone else, and it has this ripple effect. They're able to empower, like you said, with your children, even as a young mum, you wanted to do something and to show your children that anything is possible, to be a good example and a good role model. And I think that's great. And I think that's what we try and do for our clients as well. And we empower them to feel, to have confidence. I feel a lot of it is confidence, right? A lot of it is self-confidence. And knowing that, you can do it. Is it easy? No. Sometimes it's not so easy, but is it worth it? Yes. When you go
Yeah,
after
the
your
things that
goal.
are worthwhile are really easy.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you have any practical tips or techniques you use to stay motivated and inspired when you've got external pressures or expectations and they conflict?
Yeah, I that one's a good one because that has evolved over time because I've as I said, I burnt out and then I got to the point of feeling like that was creeping in again. And that was during the time where my job was on the demise, but I was the only one who didn't know about it. I felt that burnout creeping in. So having lots of balls that you're juggling and trying not to drop them all, that was a characteristic that I had, and learning to put them down is something that I've had to learn how to do, is what to prioritize
Right.
and what to sit down for later. So to actually, think about self-care, think about balance more than I ever used to, and to be selfish about it, but to be really grateful for those times where you have those choices. I come up with lots of amazing ideas and I can't do them all. So it's about focus. It's like, okay, what out of these 7 great things that I'm excited about, I only have the capacity to do 2. Pick two that I want to do now. It doesn't mean I'm never going to do them. It's just which ones am I going to do now? So writing the book, running my business, those are the 2
Yeah.
that I'm doing
funny.
at the moment.
Yeah, that's funny because that's exactly what I experienced. In fact, that's why I realized, I think, that even when I said I needed a break or I needed to organize my thoughts and my energy was scattered, why I literally broke my wrist. I've never broken anything in my life. And that's the universe just really telling me you need to really take a break and you need to hone your energy in and focus on just two things. My energy was scattered. I've got lots of different programs, lots of coaching, lots of things happening in my life, and lots of things. I've always got ideas, Julie. You've got lots of ideas. As women, when we start, really trying to reach our potential and fulfilling our purpose, or we're full of ideas and excitement. And I think our energy can be scattered very easily. So I think it's good to write all the ideas down and then just focus on 1 or 2, which is what I'm doing too. So I've got the podcast and I've got my membership, the Passionista Society, because I want all the women to feel as passionate as we do about our life. And I think that's
Once
missing.
you feel it,
Yeah.
once you feel it, you want everybody to feel like that.
Yeah, exactly. So talking about self-care, because that's something you've just mentioned, and we talked about burnout, and that's something that obviously everybody that I've spoken to, including myself, have experienced. So how do you, when you say self-care, what do you do? What's your routine for self-care? How do you prioritize it and how do you take care of yourself?
I like to get a balance of social interaction and solitude. So I'm someone who really loves to connect with others and spend time with friends or other professionals and be in those rich conversations. But I also then need time to recharge my battery between that. So I need to, and I think that's something with raising lots of kids I didn't know, because I never got any solitude for a lot of years.
Right.
But now I really appreciate that time where I can just have an afternoon of knitting or reading or going for a walk or something like that, where it's just quiet and I have time and I'm not trying to work and I'm not trying to achieve. It's just something relaxing. I like food and wine. So I like to call that self-care.
I live in Italy. That's That's definitely a must. It's a must for everybody in Italy. Food and wine, always, it's number one.
Yeah. So you understand it. It is self-care. Got to balance that in some healthy ways, but appreciate. I think the self-care is the gratitude. It's the when you take the moments to actually recognize and to say, this is me taking time for me. This is me stopping and remind yourself you're stopping to look after yourself. You're stopping to have some space, to recharge your batteries, to then be able to then give back into your career and into your family and to others. But it's got to be a give and take. I do some stretches and some yoga, and I just like to do lots, but then make sure that some of them are things that are recharging me.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you live 2 hours out of Sydney. You live in the countryside?
Yeah.
Does that help you? Because I live in the middle of the mountains, and I know that's where I chose to be. People say, "Oh, you're so lucky." No, it's where I chose to be because I need the same as you. I need to recharge, and nature helps me. So I'm guessing it helps you too.
Yeah, it's just there's just something about fresh air, sunshine at the moment. It's autumn here, so a lot of beautiful coloured leaves. So to be just outside and experiencing that crisp morning air that's not too cold yet, and seeing the colourful leaves and seeing the mountains and the countryside off in the distance, it's really hard it's easy to take for granted because that's what I walk out the door and see every day, but it's stopping and smelling the roses, so to say. It's taking those moments to just soak it up.
Yeah.
And really appreciate this. This is a beautiful place.
Yes, I can't explain nature. It's just really the tree huggers years ago in the 60s had it right. You know, everyone said they were crazy. No, they had it absolutely right, spot on. Go and hug a tree, right?
Yeah.
So Julie, what's one piece of advice you wish you'd gotten earlier on your journey?
I think that would be understanding the circle of control and influence and concern.
Wow.
Thinking about what are the things that you can control, what's within your circle of control, and then what's in your circle of influence. So there are things that you can control. You can control yourself, you can control your reactions to things, but your circle of influence are about things that you have some influence over, but they're not entirely in your control, and that's about other people. You can't control what other people say, do, think. And then there's the circle of concern, which is the broader circle, is things that you care about, but you have absolutely no say in how that unfolds. So where are you going to put your energy? What are you going to stress about? There is no point stressing about things in the bigger circle. You can put a little bit of stress into the things that are in your influence and most of it into the things in your circle of control.
I love that.
And if I would have been able to eliminate, a lot of stress from my life if I let go of worrying about things that were out of my control earlier.
Right. That's a great analogy, Julie. That's really lovely. I like that circle, the circles. I really like that. I've not heard that before, and I really like that. Yes. And it is about, what can you control and what can't you control? And you've got to, you've really got to understand, and then you've got to let go of that control and focus only on what you can influence and how, how you can make a difference, because some things you cannot, some things you do not have
It doesn't mean you have to stop caring about those things.
Yes.
They're still your concern, but you actually can't do anything unless they move into a closer circle.
Yeah.
If they move into your circle of influence, bang, jump on that, do something with it. But if it stays out in that circle of just things that you care about but you can't do anything about, that's where you can't put energy into it.
No, absolutely. Totally agree. It's a great analogy. So what advice, wrapping up now, what advice would you give to women who are just starting to pursue their own dreams, but they might lack the confidence, as did we.
I think that there is plenty of time. Be kind to yourself. You don't have to achieve everything all in one day. That you don't have to be in such a hurry to be whatever you define as successful. That the journey along the way is as important as the destination, to just enjoy each step along the way. That that your children don't remember whether you had a nicely renovated bathroom because you put them into daycare for long hours and worked really hard.
Right.
If you're choosing to put them into daycare and work really hard for other reasons, great. But there's time for those things. There's time for the really hard work. The people who matter, you're irreplaceable to. Any workplace will kick you to the curb without a second thought and replace you within a couple of weeks, or never replace you, but they'll not need you. But the people who love you, you mean the absolute world to, and they need you. So I guess that, again, it's balance. Be kind to yourself. Don't feel like you have to achieve everything at once. Do what you need to do to fill your pockets. Like I've had to do things like cleaning houses, ironing, working in a cafe at various times because we've needed to eat and pay bills.
Right.
But do those things so that you have enough. So that concept of enough is another big one, is when you have enough.
Yeah.
So that you can do things that you love as well.
Right.
So it's great when you can start to shift that balance and do things that you love that also fill your pockets. But think about those two different sides. If there are things I have to do to fill my pockets and feed myself and my family, or whatever your obligations are, and there are things that you should do to fuel your soul.
Wow.
So do one because of the other.
I think that would be the lasting message that you'd like to leave with our audience then, right? I think that's the lasting message. Yeah. Think about your pockets and think about something that fills your soul. And the two just take time to maybe come together.
Yeah.
Right.
That is it.
That's amazing. Well, Julie, thank you so much for joining us today. Because I know what time is it there in Sydney at the moment?
It's almost 4 a.m.
4 a.m. I cannot believe it. Thank you so much for being awake at some ridiculous time in the morning to join this podcast. We are truly humbled, and thank you for all of your wisely words. And thanks to our audience for hanging out with us. We hope you find it inspiring and empowering. And if you want to, if you have any questions for either of us, you can message either of us very easily right here on Facebook, or you can contact me on any of the podcast platforms. So until next time, thanks again, Julie.
Thank you.
This is Beth signing out.